Hello. PrevueDB.net's a great tool for filling in equipment datasheets and managing them. However, sometimes seeing one datasheet at a time is not the most convenient way to work. Beginning of a new project is a good example of this. You might want to create records for a lot of new pieces of equipment with datasheets that are mostly empty and which will be filled in as the project proceeds. Creating these sheets individually would be pretty tedious and possibly error-prone. And this is where PrevueDB.net's equipment list functionality comes in. It lets us specify a table with one line for each piece of equipment and with columns selected to show only the data that we're interested in. So we end up with a simple view of multiple plant items that's great for generating reports and also for quickly adding new pieces of equipment and data sheets. We'll have a look at a simple example of that now and set up an equipment list for pressure vessels. You might have noticed equipment list as an alternative to datasheets when you log into PrevueDB.net, but we can also access it here on the Tools menu. We can have a lot of different specifications, and any we've already created would be in this drop-down list. We'll create a new one and give it a suitable name. We can now see a list of all of the pieces of equipment that PrevueDB.net knows about. And if we select one of these, we can see a list of all of the data sheets that are associated with that particular piece of equipment. And if I select one of these, then we can see that data sheet over here. I'll just maximize the window there so we can get a better view of that. These odd strings in some of these fields are telling PrevueDB.net what units of measurement to use for that particular field. And the green cells are highlighting some of the physical properties, values that we might want to add onto the sheet. And we could ignore both of those things for here. We build up the table of fields that we want to see in our equipment list by just selecting them in the data sheet over here. So for instance, on the process one, we'll pick the operating pressure and the operating temperature at normal conditions. And we can see there added over here. And then maybe we'll sort of specify a demister pad. It's pretty arbitrary sort of selection here for the purposes of demonstrating it. But we can pick again the pressure and the temperature that the demister pad will work at. And we can also, so as well as combining different data sheets for the same piece of equipment, we can also combine different pieces of equipment in our specification here. So I'll pick a pressure measurement, instrument data sheet. And again, we'll pick the normal operating pressure and the normal operating temperature. If we want, we can restrict our specification to particular projects and plant combinations by ticking one of the options in the bottom box here. And it's also useful to note this little checkbox here, visible to all users. What that means is if we want, we can share our specifications with other users, so we don't all have to create our own versions of the same thing. So it saves duplication of effort. When we want to see the table that matches this specification, we can just click on Show Results. And say we haven't got anything to list here yet, but we can start by adding new records. First, though, we can see that each field that I selected on the previous screen has got its own column here. And this can lead to a sort of a sparsely populated table with a lot of columns and a lot of empty blank cells in it. And a lot of the time, this might be exactly what we want. But sometimes, and like here, I'll show you in a minute, we might want to make it obvious that the pressures and the temperatures should be the same for each row. That's the specification we're sort of putting together here. And we want to make it easier to check that. So if we go back to our specification, we can give the columns more meaningful names. We might want to do that anyway, so we can better understand the table that's displayed. But here, for the operating pressure, I'll give it this name. And for the operating temperature, got that, temperature. And what I'll do here is I'll actually use the same column name for some of these different fields in the different data sheets. So now, when we look at our table, I can see that we've got far fewer columns now. So as we fill this in for multiple bits of equipment, it'll be easier to check and to see that, our pressures are consistent, our temperatures are consistent, because they're presenting them in the same column. Worth noticing here the units of measurement. So for temperature, it's telling us it's degrees centigrade. For the pressure, we've got an exclamation mark here, and that's warning us that the different data sheets are got different units for pressure. In this particular case, it's because the pressure measurement is in gauge units, bar gauge, and the tank is in absolute units. So we might want to separate those pressures out actually into separate columns here, so the correct units of measurement will be displayed in each case. For this demo, I'll just leave it as it is for now. So when we want to start adding new equipment, we just fill in this row and save the change. So we pick which project we're working with, which plant we're working with. There's only one plant associated with this particular project. The name of this piece of equipment, call it tank 1. And its type, so a tank or a pressure vessel. And we'll specify its operating pressure. And I'll work around the fact that the units of measurement are different in each case here by explicitly putting those into the field. And we'll say the operating temperature is at 30 degrees. Save our changes. I'll repeat that for the pressure measurement device. And we'll add another tank. You'll have noticed that some of the cells have been pre-filled, and as I was editing some of them, I was also getting suggestions as to what values to type in there. That's not a feature of ProvueDB.net as such. That's something that the browser, Edge in this case, is doing for me. But a lot of time that sort of can be a useful shortcut to filling in data such as this. So it's another advantage of ProvueDB.net being something that works within a browser. So now, if we return to our specification, and if we quit the equipment lists view, we can see in our tree view that we have these new pieces of equipment. We've got our new pressure measurement datasheet's been created, and for our tank and pressure vessel, we've got tank 2, tank 1. In each case, we've created 2 datasheets, one for the process datasheet, one for the process data, and one for the demister pad. Sometimes, depending on what we've been doing before we switch to the equipment list view, we might need to click the refresh button here to update that tree view to display that. But as you can see, that was a sort of a much quicker way, especially if I didn't have to create the specification from scratch, if I was reusing one that was already in the system. That's a much quicker way to create multiple data sheets. And also to generate maybe a list of equipment. I can export the table as a CSV file, maybe viewed elsewhere in Excel or something like that. So this sort of equipment list view is a very handy way, say, of working with small bits of data, but for multiple or larger number of pieces of equipment, larger number of data sheets. Thank you for watching, and I hope this is useful.